This first panel will be on new energy, so on new power sources and energy storage sources. We're fortunate to have three experts who I think you'll all be very impressed by. You have your bios, their bios, so I will be very brief. But just going as you see them laid out here, Esther Bryan is on a detailed assignment to the Power Systems Engineering Research and Development Division at the U.S. Department of Energy and the Office of Electricity Delivery and Energy Reliability. She is responsible for providing technical support to the division, which implements smart grid research and development programs including energy storage and microgrids. She joined the Department of Energy in 1995 and most recently served as a project manager for the National Nuclear Security Administration, working on international nuclear nonproliferation for 12 years. Dr. Kim Hee-jip currently teaches energy policy at Seoul National University's Graduate School of Public Administration as a visiting professor. Additionally, he is working for the Korean government in several publicly traded companies, as the co-chair for the Korea Energy New Business Committee of the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy, together with Vice Minister Moon, who's here with us today, and as a member of the Korea Energy Expert Committee and an advisory board member for the minister at Modi as well. James Suciu is president of global sales for GE Power and Water and an officer of the General Electric Company. GE's power and water business provides an array of power generation, energy delivery, and water process technologies to solve the world's challenges locally. As a thought leader in the energy industry, he has been asked to share his expertise at numerous global summits and industry events, and he serves as the co-chair of the served as the co-chair, of the U.S.-Japan Business Council's energy session and has delivered a number of keynote addresses, including one at the Global 2010 conference for the future of a green economy in Vancouver, Canada. And with that, I will turn the stage over to Dr. Kim.
Thank you very much for good introduction. It's an honor for me to make a speech here on this very important topic for Korean government and also for U.S. government. Can we set up the screen slides on? Okay, here you go. Okay, the topic that I'm going to speak about is the collaboration in new energy area between U.S. and Korea. And as Troy introduced me, I'm teaching right now the energy policy in Korea, which has been a very good experience. After 26 years in business consulting area, I worked in private sector only, but for the last 5 years, it has been a fantastic experience for me to participate in the formulating the energy policy for the nation and exchanging all the great ideas, a bit different perspective from country perspective. And for the country, it is very different experience. So I very appreciate that opportunity that I had. I think one of the hot topic right now is the oil price drop. As you know that for the last 6 months, the oil price dropped significantly. It was over $110 in June last year, but March this time we have actually about $43. So significant drop, which is big impact on energy industry overall, as you know that. But another important and very fundamental trend we see is climate change effort. Even in the situation of low oil price, one of the significant development in last December, actually November, I think is the agreement between two countries, US and China, and two leaders, they finally agreed that they will make the significant effort to reduce the CO2, the greenhouse gas emissions together. And I believe that U.S., you are taking actual and practical actions that by 2030, CO2 emission will be reduced by 30%, and from the 2005 level. And by 2020, 60 gigawatt of coal power plants will be removed, which is about 1/5 of the coal power plants that you actually have in 2012. I think it's very ambitious and very actual step and promise to make the real difference in the climate change efforts. Because of two big country leaders, their serious commitment on climate change efforts, we believe that the global climate change efforts will take different shape. I think that there will be more serious efforts, and Korea is determined to join in that climate change efforts too. And overall, I think that we have been dependent on the fossil fuel for last about 100 years, maybe more than 100 years. But the energy sector is going through dynamic changes recently. One major factor I explain as oil price drop and the increase of uncertainties. That it is very difficult for right now for business leaders and also government policymakers to make long-term decisions on energy sector. The second fundamental driver is, I believe, that climate change, the efforts we are making in climate change areas. But there's another fundamental, the trend that we see as a very important for us is the progression of technologies in energy areas. Not only the information technologies, but also many different types of engineering technologies being used in energy sector. And we believe that there will be significant innovations that we will see in the future. With those three major fundamental changes in energy sector, we believe that we should prepare for the future. As Mr. Moon, the second Vice Minister of MOTI, as he mentioned, I think in 1980s, the middle of 1980s, when we had a low oil price at the time, I think Korea made one smart decision. And they're using the time of low oil price. Korea actually successfully diversified into nuclear and also LNG as a major source of the energy of the industry. And that's what Korea did in the age of low oil price in the middle of 80s. And so we have now the diversified portfolio in Korea. We have oil, but we also have gas. We also have nuclear power. So we can actually choose, we can make small adjustment among those portfolio energy products that we have. As you know, the low oil price have some the negative impact on economics of new energy area. However, we believe that this time of low oil price right now is another great opportunity that we can make the structural changes in energy sector for the next 20, 30 years with time frame that we can see. So we are working very hard to find out what major structural changes in energy sector we can do right now where we can get benefit in next 20, 30 years. I think we believe that applying new technologies aggressively into energy sector is one of the major, the clear directions that we like to take. Every 5 years, Korea is defining the master plan in energy policy, the National Energy Master Plan. And last year, we did the National Energy Master Plan. And Korea identified the demand management and distribute network are the two major areas we can combine IT and technologies very heavily into the energy sector, and we can make the big difference. Demand management area, we focused only on supply side so far, but we like to change our paradigm. We like to focus on demand side, and let's bring all those technologies that we can control and we can manage, we can reduce the demand side of the energy. The distributed network is another area we believe that having one central network has a big risk for the country, and a lot of technologies we see can help distribute network generation and also consumption of the energy in the future. There are specific areas that we like to make the actual results, practical business models. That's actually the one major difference. That rather than just having ideas, we like to change the ideas into action, have the real business performance. I think our second vice minister went through those items in detail, but demand management side, energy management system, microgrid, solar PV leasing, and electric vehicle and infrastructure for that, and also utilization of waste heat from power plants are the key areas that we already start working on, making some progresses. One example is, I believe that self-sufficient, the microgrid, especially for those islands. This is Jeju Island, which is located south of Korea, and it has about 600,000 people. And it's one of the vacation spot and has many visitors. And it's using power a lot, and the growth of energy demand in this island is very significant. And the actual cost of power in this island is about 3 times higher than that of the mainland. So it has actually economic feasibility for a lot of renewable energies, microgrid, ESS, and those items that we like to try. So the Korea is determined to apply those new technologies starting from where the cost is very high. And one of them is Jeju Island. I think they have a very ambitious plan. They like to change the island to carbon-free island by 2030 in 15 years. 100% electric vehicle transition. So starting from this year, they're actually making the transitions. And about by 2030, 100% changes to electric vehicle. And there will be about 370,000 cars. And also renewable energy 100% by 2030 is the plan. Starting with this year, a lot of wind power, offshore wind power will be added. And by 2030, 100% transition to renewable energy. And mainly will be on the offshore wind power. So this is one of the pilot projects that we like to apply new technologies very heavily into the current energy sector. I think US and Korea has strong national strategic alliance, and we have FTA. We are two strong alliance country here. And we believe that we share the value of climate change efforts, and also we respect IP assets, intellectual property assets. I think US and Korea, we can learn from each other how we transform to new energy area by sharing best practices and also R&D efforts. I think, for example, we are very impressed by US, how you actually making advances in taking the renewable energy seriously and having solar and wind power, all those farms in your country. We believe that two countries in energy sector, in new energy area, we can get mutual benefits, improved climate change efforts, economic benefits also. And also eventually that is we can strengthen the national security alliance between two countries. As a next step, I think things that I like to propose is we need more collaboration efforts. First, we like to see that we can have a very effective information sharing channel that we can actually share the new energy information effectively. And second, we like to increase the joint R&D efforts. We're spending about 900 million US dollars in R&D efforts in energy sector, and I believe DOE has about 26 billion entire budget. About half of them is on R&D. We believe that we can share some of the R&D efforts together, then we'll make a much more difference there. And third, this is probably the final goal, that we should increase the joint businesses, that the lot of technology that you have and strong manufacturing skills that Korea has, if combined together, we believe that we can create a good energy business in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Dr. Kim. Ms. Bryant, we'll go to you, and then just to try and make this official possible, Mr. Suciu, excuse me, we'll go that order. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Esther Bryan, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today to join this panel discussion. I would like to mention that Dr. Emery Gook, who's the program manager for the energy storage program, is not able to join us. He's actually on travel, and he typically would be giving this presentation. So I have been in close communication with him. He provided a lot of advice and insight in terms of this presentation. So I wanted to acknowledge his efforts and express his regrets that he could not be here. So we could go to the next slide. Okay, so the Office of Electricity Delivery and Energy Reliability, which is the office I'm from in the Department of Energy, the mission is to give the electric grid modernization, is the actual mission of the office is to drive grid modernization and resiliency into the energy infrastructure. OE has a broad portfolio of activities spanning from grid research and development to energy emergency response. As a department's lead for grid modernization, we work closely with other government agencies, industry, universities, and the Department of Energy National Laboratories to ensure clean energy technologies can be integrated into a safe, reliable, and cost-effective manner. The future grid provides a critical platform for U.S. prosperity, competitiveness, and innovation for a global clean energy economy. The modern grid must deliver reliable, affordable, and clean electricity to customers where they want it, when they want it, and how they want it. Modernizing the grid not only achieves public policy objectives for clean, reliable, and affordable electricity, but is also intricately tied to U.S. economic competitiveness, innovation, and security against extreme weather, cyber threats, physical attacks, natural disasters, fuel and supply diversity, and aging infrastructure. Energy storage plays an integral role in the future smart grid. Next slide, please. So the energy storage program mission is to accelerate the development and adoption of energy storage as a necessary and critical buffer between generation and demand, enabling greater grid flexibility and resiliency. As seen in this chart, the energy storage program works across the entire technology development cycle across a spectrum of technical and commercial readiness levels, from basic science all the way to market acceptance. Next slide, please. So the energy storage system consists of the power electronics, shown here in this chart, the energy storage device, and facility and transaction costs, and facilities that actually house and protect the system. Excuse me. The most expensive component is typically the energy storage device, which comprise anywhere from 25 to 40% of the cost, shown here in this diagram. Technology costs can be driven down by focused research across a broad array of technologies, as shown in the previous slide. Energy storage provides a suite of application benefits that are not fully monetized. Efforts to drive costs down will enable the realization of the multiple benefits of energy storage and appropriately financially compensate those who deploy energy storage systems. Energy storage benefits include time of use, energy cost management, renewables capacity firming, load following, demand charge management, renewables and electric energy time shift, electric supply capacity, renewables grid integration, electric service reliability and power quality, voltage support, transmission congestion relief and support, and frequency regulation, etc. The levelized cost of energy depends on the specific energy storage technology and application. Policy becomes an important factor because even if energy storage becomes financially prudent, utilities, customers, and regulators must have confidence in the technology's safety, reliability, and performance. Next slide, please. So some examples of how an energy storage technology has direct impact on U.S. public policy is seen in this beacon flywheel demonstration project on the top of this slide. So there were actually two projects, one of which was funded by the DOE Loan Guarantee Program and the other by the Office of Electricity. And the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act stimulus funding provided Beacon with 2 utility-scale flywheel facilities for frequency regulation. Previous methods to balance constantly shifting load fluctuations was to vary the frequency and periodically adjust generation response to an independent system operator signal. Flywheel storage responds instantaneously and represents an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and is twice as effective as fossil generation. This specific project provided the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission the basis to establish the pay-for-performance approach to frequency regulation, resulting in higher compensation for fast response resources, and allowed the company to begin drawing revenue in June 2013. Similarly, this other project, the Duke Energy linked with the wind farm in No Trees, Texas, demonstrated remote operation, ramp control, smoothing, and frequency regulation. The project was a crucial pilot for the Electric Reliability Council of Texas to also introduce pay for performance. So the next half of my talk will focus on a few selected energy storage demonstration projects integrating renewables. And as I understand from the two previous speakers, energy storage is definitely plays a very important role in Korea's future plans. So here's an example. Here are a couple examples of some demonstration projects in the U.S. So next slide, please. So the Enervolt iron chromium flow battery demonstration project was commissioned last May in Turlock, California. This project is a great example of integrating renewables such as solar photovoltaic panels used and seen here. The total storage of the flow batteries was 250 kilowatts per 1 megawatt hour for renewable firming. Next slide. And here we have the Southern California Edison project, which included one of the world's largest lithium-ion battery systems developed by LG Chemical, based in Seoul, within the Tehachapi wind resource area for voltage support, wind integration, load management, and ramping. This project was commissioned last September with ABB as the integrator. And here on the bottom of this slide, you'll see our two very happy-looking gentlemen. Dr. Juk is the one to the left here, and we have our LG Chemical representative there on the right. Next slide. So the energy storage program also partners with the international community, such as Korea, which currently is a world leader in the development of sodium battery technology. Vincent Sprinkle of Pacific Northwest National Laboratory is working with Ki-young Jung from the Research Institute of Industrial Science and Technology, RIST for short, to develop a separate reservoir-type planar sodium-based battery. This project is funded by the Korea Institute of Energy Technology Evaluation and Planning under the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy. Other participating organizations include POSCO Energy, POSCO University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and Pohang University of Science and Technology, POSTECH. Because of the successful collaboration efforts, PNNL and RIST are now trying to initiate a new project to co-develop commercial-scale modules of intermediate temperature sodium metal halide batteries. The goal of this project is to develop and demonstrate a cost-effective 1 kilowatt commercial-scale multi-cell module. And we can go to the next slide, but this concludes my remarks here, and I just wanted to end with special thanks to Dr. Juk, Mr. Sprankle, and folks from the DOE offices, Dan Tan and Ron Sherry from DOE, and also Mr. Tokala. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And on behalf of all my colleagues at GE, we're very proud to be here today and to talk about the energy industry. General Electric's was founded in the energy industry, and our relationship with Korea goes back over 40 years. And so we feel very connected to the discussion topics that we have today. I'll give you a little overview of how we see the sort of the mega trends in the industry, not only in Korea, but around the world, and then how that relates to technology. So obviously the growth in the emerging markets is a big piece of the energy space, and it also drives a lot of the investments in technology. You're going to talk later this afternoon, I know, about gas and gas availability, but certainly the technology around LNG and then the abundance, the more development of natural gas has created and the availability of moving it around has changed a lot, the mechanism and policies of different countries around energy. Renewable growth on a large scale, especially wind, has been a tremendous impact. You know, GE got into the wind business about 15 years ago, and in that 15 years, with a lot of investment by us and others, you know, we've shipped over 30,000 wind turbines on a global basis. The capacity factors have gone from 15% to over 50%. If you look at reliability, it's gone from the low 80s to the high 90s to be traditional, to be consistent with traditional generation. So I think wind is one of those great stories about how in a short period of time, with investment by industry participants and by support by policy that you can make a substantive change, a material change to a technology, a new technology like wind. I think going forward, many of the things that you've heard about will get similar investment around distributed power. I think distributed, as you heard from several of the speakers already, power closer to the point of use to get away from transmission costs and inefficiencies is certainly part of the future. And then disruptive technologies, but I'd also say disruptive business models is sort of the next generation. So solar, you could argue, is not only a distributed technology, but there are business models, rooftop solar, other types of microgrid and microgrid management, which is a different business model, which I think will also make a big change in the industry going forward. So the bottom line is there's still a lot of investment and need and different types of need in the energy industry on a global basis, which is one of the reasons why we still invest just in the power business about $1 billion a year in new technologies. And the reason is because there isn't one technology. You heard from Vice Minister Moon's long list of things to do, that there is no just one technology or one solution that's going to be the answer for any place. So we are investing in higher efficiency gas turbines. Our latest air-cooled H machine, it really now allows combined cycle efficiencies over 62%, so very, very high combined cycle efficiencies. And we spent a lot of money making these machines now also very flexible because of renewable and other types of intermittent power. These large combined cycle plants used to be relatively inflexible. They weren't easy to move around to match the load. Today, these plants are very flexible and can help renewables and back up renewables. I talked about wind leadership. We're up to multi-megawatt machines with very long blade lengths, up to now 120-meter blades, where you can get very, very high capacity factors in even moderate wind regimes. And if you look at the cost and competitiveness of wind, wind can compete with every other form of generation now with a little bit of help, which is very different than obviously it was just a decade ago. The next part of what we're really investing a lot in is around asset management. We call it the industrial internet. Simply put, though, it's high-tech sensors along with software and detailed analytics to really run assets better. So run the system better, run the assets better, run them more efficiently. Not only is that lower cost from an overall operation and maintenance perspective, but also makes the system more efficient. So when Vice Minister Moon talks about smart grid is a part of that system that actually helps both the generation assets, the distribution assets, the demand management assets, helps all of that work together in a much more efficient way, and therefore making the system more efficient and making the emissions cleaner as an offsuit of that. And then we are also in the process of acquiring the Alstom power business, which basically just gets us broader. As I said, I don't think we believe there's any one solution. So today, GE is a leader in onshore wind. Alstom has an offshore wind business. And so as we put this team together, we will just have more and more technology and offerings for the industry. Going forward, I think you heard it on the list. I think rooftop solar is going to continue to grow as the cost of PV panels comes down, and as the utility and regulatory systems become more accepting of all of this distributed power. Although I would argue it's growing very quickly, the business models are still challenging. Solar City is probably one of the largest rooftop solar businesses in the United States, and they are still losing significant amounts of money. They are still investing, so as we move forward, these are tough industries, and to get this business model to work. But we believe that distributed on-site and rooftop power will continue to grow, energy storage, you heard a lot about batteries, and but you see projects in California and other places where you have real peak shaving, real demand management, real ancillary system support, so frequency modulation, other things that you heard about from Esther, where batteries and storage systems can add value, real economic value to the system. And then fuel cells. GE started investing in fuel cells over 20 years ago, but getting them to a cost and performance point has been a long road. But we have a new solid oxide fuel cell technology that we're very excited about, and we're actually investing to build the first pilot manufacturing facility. And then we believe in the future that we'll be able to make what I'll call combined cycle, but it's a different word, fuel cell systems that could be very high efficient, where you have a fuel cell with the off gas feeding into a reciprocating low BTU engine, where you might be able to get 65 or 70% efficiencies, which were only reached at the largest scale, now at a much more smaller scale, much more distributed scale. So we're continuing to invest, and one of the great things about having a portfolio is not only do we make the largest gas turbine in the world, but we also make a lot of small ones in Jenbacher and in Waukesha, and so we can marry up these small distributed systems, but also the large combined cycle systems. So then they asked me to make some suggestions for Korea going forward, which this is very dangerous. I think Vice Minister Moon had a very long list, so I hate to think that I'm going to add to that long list of things that he's focused on. But just a couple of things that, as we look at the Korean system today, there's a lot of focus around energy efficiency and environmental progress, but it's not always represented in the system itself the way plants get dispatched. So if you look at a lot of systems, it's not just Korea, it's many places where plants get dispatched on the lowest avoided cost. It's still focused on cost, but the cost doesn't always take into account the fact that the most efficient machines may have been just recently invested in, so they're not as far down the depreciation curve, for example, or that there may not be effective mechanisms yet for pricing of carbon or environmental benefits. So I think part of the challenge going forward will be to have regulatory experimentation around how the plants run to create a very acceptable and responsible market for people to invest in new technology. There was a paper put out just in the last 3 to 4 months by the World Energy Congress around similar focus. GE was a co-chair of that report along with one of our biggest customers, Iberdrola. But the whole idea is to make sure that there's an investment environment to incent people to continue to not only put in the most efficient facilities, but continue to raise the efficiency of the existing assets as they can be over time. And then one of the other challenges to systems is always the scale of systems, and some of the most advanced combined cycles now are very large. And so I think the grid operators and the grid systems always have to be looking at the scale of the plant. I think we're going to end up in a world where you may end up with very large plants and very small plants as you balance the need, and so there will still be needs for big central generation because it is very efficient. And then the idea in this industry, I think there are a lot of local and global codes that could be reconciled just to help the system be more cost effective. So, listen, I think this space, it's actually exciting to come to a discussion like this and see consistency between the different speakers, and even from the vice minister on down, that academia, regulators, industry are all kind of focused on the same things. I guess that means we're finally making progress as we move down the line. So with that, I thank you again for inviting GE to this conference, and then I'll turn it back over to Troy.
All right, if I could ask our panelists to join us back up here, and I'll probably take a few minutes and ask a couple questions, and then we'll turn it open to the audience.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no, it's a little dance.
Okay.
Tell you what, I'll go around this way.
Thank you.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank all three of you and Vice Minister Moon and Das Turk, who's left, for three very excellent and interesting presentations. I think there's a lot, here to talk about. And I mean, we're sort of moving off in different directions, but, in new directions, apologies. But first, let's start. Dr. Kemp, I mentioned when I introduced you that, you're part of this new energy committee in Korea and everything. Could you give us some idea of, maybe how this committee works and sort of how it connects then into industry and things of that nature?
Sure. September last year, we had a big energy discussion forum. It was organized actually together with the president, our current president, Park, and it was actually a great session. We invited global experts in new energy areas, together with several experts, a lot of businesses together, that we actually have a good debate and open discussions how we can actually make the market, create the market in new energy area. Since then, Korean government decided to create a committee which can focus on creating the actual market and make the real performance, real results. That committee was formed, and Jae Do-moon, the second vice minister who presented today, is the leader there, and it's an honor for me to be co-leader for that committee. So together with Mr. Moon and myself, we actually made efforts to create the real market and help the businesses to deliver the real business results. We create the market, we change the regulations, we help the businesses who has difficulties in starting those new startups, and some of the areas that they like to apply new technologies, that we made efforts to help them. Certain markets are created already. We are making progress, and we're trying to expand our scope into other areas. Hopefully, some of the areas that you mentioned today, like a fuel cell and ESS, is actually a big area that we are very interested in. We are making the actual market creation effort, and that's the major activity of the committee.
Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting, all the presentations, they've touched on the issue of energy storage. And, as we move into new types of energy, I think we'd probably all agree that energy storage is one of the key factors of that. But one of the things, and that I'd be interested in getting, please, any of you feel free to jump in on this, though I'd be interested with your business background, James, if you feel like there's something you can add here specifically. But, we talked about this issue of electronic vehicles, and, one of the keys is batteries, be it either the range anxiety that people have that we've talked about, or, the issue of just simply, how quickly can you charge them and everything. And one of the things that I remember reading a few years back was that there was an Israeli startup that had sort of talked about something similar to what Vice Minister Moon had discussed in his presentation, which is this idea of rather than you plugging in, that you would go to the equivalent of your gas station and they would switch out the battery for you and everything. And it sounds like, Korea is moving sort of towards that direction, this idea of having taxis and buses. But, in terms of the electric vehicle and the energy storage issue, how, because this startup in Israel ultimately didn't succeed, is this the best model going forward? Is it just a situation maybe the Israeli market wasn't large enough kind of issue, and maybe they should have started on the public side first to build up that sort of base infrastructure? Or sort of, should we be looking in other directions?
So I guess my 2 cents on that is that the business model is still forming. So I think range anxiety is relative, right? So if you're in a country where people have, on average, multiple cars, you can have a city car and a transportation car, and the average American still doesn't drive more than 100 miles a day, right? So if your car makes, like a Tesla today, does 200 miles a day, there's going to be a certain percentage of the time where, you're not going to have an issue, and if you're charging up when you go to the store, or if you're charging as the infrastructure builds out, and then we'll see, right, what happens. Tesla, I think you probably all saw, they just had a report out, I want to say about a week ago, but they're testing a business model. So they have one business model, which is these superchargers, right? So that's a 1 hour sort of major recharge, and that's sort of free. You pay a one-time charge and you participate, and now they're testing to switch out the batteries for a fee. So I think it'll be interesting to see then, you can, in their minds, change a battery as fast as you can fill up a tank. How much is that worth? And so I think the business models will still be determined, and I think it's not just this industry, it's every industry where an early adapter may be too early, right? So again, it doesn't matter. That may be a right business model, but it may be 10 years from now, not 5 years ago, right? And so I think it's still forming, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges about this space is that the business model is not settled, even the technology is not settled, the economics, the regulatory environment's not settled, and the business model is not settled. So you have a very difficult environment that everybody has to sort of navigate their way through.
Actually, we just had the Global International EV Conference in Jeju Island, and we had a variety of cars demonstrate there, and also infrastructure demonstration at the same time. And we are very actually impressed by China in their EV adoption. Some of the cities like Shenzhen, like those cities, they already have about 15%, 20% is their buses EV right now at this point, and they're making heavy investment into it. And as you know, they have a smoke problem, air pollution problem is a big issue, the political issue. We believe that they will make a big change. And also in Korea, as I mentioned in Jeju Island, that we trying to change 100% EV by 2030. We studied several different models, like the Israel model that you mentioned. However, it also requires heavy investment into the stations. I think the EV, we should take the different paradigm. EV should be more like treated as like a smartphone, changing from the old gasoline, old phone, wire phone to like a smartphone. And EV should be more like a charged overnight. It's more like a second car at this point. And then I think you will have very convenient range. You can go for the day. For commercial areas, we believe that bus or trucks who actually has the predetermined route are the ones that we can actually apply EV faster rather than the passenger cars. So for passenger cars, we're thinking of more like a smartphone. And a lot of innovations like smartphone will be added to smart car, like no driver in EV. I think that's sort of the future that we see. A lot of apps will be developed for smart cars. However, the commercial side, the predetermined route, delivery trucks and buses are the ones that we like to change first.
I will add to this discussion, if I may. In terms of the investment for the Department of Energy, there is an office, Energy Efficiency, Renewable Energy, that does put investment and resources into electric vehicles. While I'm not from that office, I just will say, just from what I've seen in trends in the US, there is an increased usage of the hybrid vehicles. And so just in line with what James and Dr. Kim have shared, there perhaps could be maybe a transition period that we have to go through. And from a grid perspective, there's also some concerns that have to be studied in terms of all these plug-in vehicles charging up and how that impacts the grid and the reliability. So I think there needs to be some more study into this, and I think that some of those studies are underway.
Actually, I think that's interesting. I don't know, maybe we can expand on that a little bit. There is, I think, a transition period and everything. And I guess in your work on energy storage, have you seen anything in terms of like once we get to the point to where we have capacity we feel is good enough, how long it would take, be it either for, industrial uses or more, like you were talking about, more the direct distribution, locally at the houses and everything, to have batteries in place. One of the ideas I'll just sort of toss out where I'm thinking about this sort of on the more the house level is a colleague of mine who works on energy was telling me once that one of the ideas that he thought was interesting is that you have all these potentially electric batteries for hybrid vehicles and things that at some point they can't hold a charge that's quite useful enough for the car, but that they could still then be integrated into households and used there in a secondary market for electricity, lighting, and things. So I guess how close are we to being able to transition, and sort of how long is that transition period really going to maybe be?
Well, I think this is a long-term evolution because, again, as people try to find the right economic points for using storage for modulation or for peak shaving so I tell you, what it takes is markets and it takes experimentation. So California, I think if you're in the United States, California had a huge bid that was kind of over the last year that was decided just recently, and of those, I think about 80% of the projects were storage projects, right? So as we'll learn as those things go on. So if you think of renewables and solar and now storage, and then the combination of those things as these systems get built out, and we'll learn. But I do think that the electric car market is doing exactly what a lot of people hoped it would do, which is it's driving investment in battery technology that then can be used for, in other places, whether it's just from a cost perspective or a understanding perspective, right? So you're getting a lot of investment in batteries now because the market is growing.
I will say that I'm confident that the Energy Efficiency Renewable Energy Office, their transportation office, has established targets of some kind in terms of electric vehicles. While I don't know those numbers offhand, I could look that up for folks if people are interested and get back to you. But I don't know those numbers offhand, but I'm pretty sure each office does look into those types of questions and in terms of establishing targets.
Actually had the experience to see the real case of vehicle to grid. Detroit Electric Car, that's the company in US. They're actually using battery from Korea, EIG, that's the company name. And the car has the battery, and whenever there's any blackout, the car, one just car will provide about 2 days and a half electricity to the home. And that's the capacity they have. And they actually applied that technology in Norway as a much bigger site. And that's actual practice they're testing at this point. And I actually got contacted by several ventures that they're studying using the used batteries of EV after 5 years or 10 years. Using the used batteries, they can still hold a lot of the energy in those equipments, combine those together to make a very economical storage services. So I know that several ventures already studying that one, and they believe that there will be a good market for that. So this is sort of the startups thinking innovations using those technologies into the area.
All right, well, I could probably ask questions all day, but with that, why don't we go ahead and open up to the audience? George. And George, thank you for letting me steal your idea there. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? What excellent presentations. My name is George Hutchinson, by the way. I'm a senior Korean regional planner for Secure Fence Incorporated. Is it okay to just ask a couple of quick questions and then fade back? Okay. Again, brilliant presentations. And, Korea, for those of us who've been tracking Korea in the energy space, Korea has a lot to be proud of. They've just done a remarkable job, very nimble in the policy space, really beginning, it's been ongoing obviously for many years, but if you go back to about this 2006, 2007, 8 time frame, Lee-Myung-bak, and then the very supply-centric policies of that administration, and then now the very seamless shift into a more demand side focus. Very impressive. So I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions. One is going to be a comment primarily for Dr. Kim, but I'm also very interested in the other panelists' opinions on this. The first item is I don't think enough really can be said about the potential natural partnership for batteries and U.S. automobile, innovative automobile technology and know-how. I'm so pleased to see what's going on in Chejudo with that project. But interestingly, you mentioned vehicle-to-grid. And vehicle-to-grid here in the United States, and this is Esther, something that you may be familiar with, but the DoD, the Department of Defense, actually is running the world's largest vehicle-to-grid demonstration with help and assistance from the Department of Energy. And a lot of it is, you think of the military, you think of weapon systems and that kind of, but a lot of it is to defray the cost of alternative energy fueled vehicles. So with that in mind, my first question, and it may not be a familiar territory for the Korean policymakers, but considering the alliance that we have with Korea, USFK, the bases over in Korea that are always getting hammered for not being clean, oil seepages and plumes and bad air and loud aircraft flying around. Is there a potential to do something similar in Korea with the United States, where the DoD installation is a test bed to highlight and feature some green technologies? That's the first question. The second question is, while I totally understand the demand side shift in Korean policy, one thing that we'll never get away from is the fact that there's quite a bit of shale gas potential right now globally, and tight oil potential. So for Korea, I know the Park Geun-hye administration has kind of put the E&P side in place in order to kind of clean that area up. But I think KEEI, KOGAS, and KORES are still going to be players in that supply side space for Korea moving forward. And in looking at Korea's export-oriented model, there's a lot of stuff and a lot of technology that can be built and tooled up to help advance this area that's simply not going away. So I wanted to get your opinion on that. And then the last question is, there are several economic free trade zones burgeoning right now in Korea. And on the West Coast, in particular, there's the Saemangeum down in the Cholla area. And then there's in the Pyeongtaek area, there's quite a bit of activity. And my question is, where is there an energy template that's being applied to these economic free trade zones? And if there is, what part does renewable energy integration play?
Thanks, Jordan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Heavy questions. And I have to admit that I'm not the policy decision maker. I think these are the questions probably for Mr. Moon, but I will try. I think the first question is on how we can apply the microgrid concept or new energy concept into maybe army base in Korea. Maybe that's possible options. I think that's a great point. Two discussions are just involved. Actually, one is the U.S. Navy director actually came to Korea about 3 weeks ago, and we had a meeting that because U.S. has a lot of Navy and Air Force bases, very remote areas, and they have a significant issues on power supply. And their suggestion is whether they can try some of the microgrid concept that we developed in Korea, whether we can apply those concepts into those Navy and Air Force bases. And I know that one of the Air Force base in Africa, actually, we are going on some project there. And the operation director of Navy was very excited. Actually, he brought several researchers at the time, so we had brainstorming sessions together, and the subsequent conversations going on that area. And in Korea, Mr. Moon is looking at several options on how we can expand the smart grid, as he mentioned, and several areas that have been identified that we like to apply for smart grid. But so far, Army base was not the candidate. But I think that's a good suggestion that probably we should think about that one as a good candidate. Your second question on the supply side, KEEI and coal gas, whether they will continue that EMP efforts. And this is more like a personal opinion. I think they should. I think this is great timing that they should think about investing into EMP asset. And another reason that we should do is we have a great manufacturing base, like a offshore plant, LNG shipping, and those areas we believe are good synergy. That if we help EMP business globally, and some portion is done by Koreans, I think that would be a great test bed or starting point. We can actually create better the shipping, the plant businesses, steel, those businesses who can supply all the materials into EMP asset. So that's my personal belief. But as you know, as you mentioned, that we have to make some adjustment into the past investment we made. That's happening right now in Korea. The renewables, Korea has the definite plan. As part of the second energy master plan that we developed the last year, we specified how much portfolio we like to have in renewable energy. And Mr. Moon and his team is making a big effort applying the RPS as just like the US, and a lot of incentives and try to help the actual renewable size on it. And the challenge are probably the same, it's high cost. And several of the government effort has been made. And I think the self-sufficient island, energy self-sufficient island concept is a very good one, because the cost of electricity right now is about 5 times, even 10 times of the mainland. So that's the area we like to start, that high cost of electricity. We like to use solar, wind power, ESS, very expensive solution, but it may make economic sense over there. So that's the area, starting with Jeju Island, Ulung Island that Mr. Moon mentioned. We are trying to expand that one into about 60 islands this year. So that's the progress we like to make. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank this gentleman for bringing up the successful microgrid demonstration project. I believe it was Fort Hickam, Pearl Harbor that you're referring to at the military base. Yeah, so that was done under the Spiders microgrid demonstration projects, and at various bases. There's extensive assessments using the energy surety microgrid design tool set, and basically assessing the various military bases for microgrid usage, and one of the first was the actual base that this gentleman mentioned. So that is actually run out of our office as well. So it's actually a joint cooperation with Department of Defense involved.
Yes, Alex.
Alex Forster, East West Center here in Washington. The second energy master plan sort of either delayed or changed some of the targets that were outlined in the first energy master plan. And so I'm wondering, with that in mind, what is the implementation schedule looking like for some of these goals? Is it likely that when the next president is elected and outlines the next energy master plan, are targets going to be delayed even further, or are things going to be more on track than they were the last time around? And as a follow-on to that, what are the implications for targets that will soon be announced for the COP21 conference in Paris later this year? Thanks.
Wow. Another loaded question. Okay, I think one thing that I'd like to mention here is you have to understand the background of Korea in energy sector. We are importing about 97% of energy. And year 2013, we spent about $180 billion a year to import energy. And our annual government budget right now about $380 billion. So about half of annual government budget, that same amount we are spending into energy import. So this is a big issue. And I think Korea has a strong desire, naturally, that we like to create the new energy businesses, changing from fossil fuel into the new energy area than any other country, we believe. In second master plan, some change we made, I think it's not a significant change. Actually, we make a similar adjustment, some adjustment into it. And some of the aspects that we also have to consider is a plan. However, like nuclear, we made some adjustment into it, right? And renewable energy, we made some adjustment because one of the reasons is the economic benefit, which was promised about 3 to 5 years ago, we didn't make that much progress yet, right? So depending on all those things, that every 5 years we like to adjust a little bit on our master plan. But overall direction, I think Korean government is committed on climate change. Korean government is try to give the direction to the businesses where we are heading so they can make the investment decisions, they can forecast the future. So that's the entire objective of the master plan, and I think Korean government will continue to do that. Okay.
I will, in terms of the climate action plan, the president's climate action plan that he set forth, a lot of the targets that I mentioned earlier are defined from that plan. Our office has certain targets for energy storage, for our microgrids. And so, as I alluded to earlier, for electric vehicles, I'm pretty sure and confident that those targets are also defined by that plan.
Just real quick, I mean, you talked about how much Korea spends on energy. Some of this is going to be about efficiency as well. I mean, you talked about some of this, James, so that newer equipment is much more efficient, even if it's not on the same depreciation cycle yet. Sort of, what opportunities are there either on the U.S. side of selling, higher efficiency equipment to Korea to take and reduce this cost? So rather than Korea importing, the energy, they're importing the technology. And what opportunities do you think there are for efficiency, Dr. Kim, on this, and maybe even collaborating on new R&D in this area?
So for us, a lot of our investment is around, again, making existing assets better. So if you take a look at Korea, we've even had customers who will take out an older gas turbine and put in a new model gas turbine and make step changes in efficiency. So when the fuel, as the the fuel cost is high, the economics of the changes in technology, because again, historically, a power plant would be a 30-year or more lifed asset. But in today's world, technology is moving so quickly that there could be significant efficiency changes that happen in a half-life of that, right? So, and so I think Korea is making investments. Many of the power generation companies in Korea are investing in the existing facilities really to stay competitive so that they can make power. And so I think certainly from a G's perspective, a manufacturing perspective, that is a lot of our focus. How do we help these plants continue to move up the efficiency chain even though they're existing?
About 2 days ago, Mr. Moon and our team, we actually made a visit to Brookhaven, the laboratory, which under, I believe, DOE. Yes. Right? Okay. And I think we got very impressed by several projects, what they're working on. But also, we saw that some of them actually sort of duplicate effort that we are doing in Korea. So I think our suggestion would be that let's exchange more information and ideas in R&D areas. Let's share those R&Ds, and maybe GE, like company like GE, can participate in some of the R&D projects in Korea, and some of the Korean companies also can participate in the R&D activities in US. And by sharing the R&D information together effectively, I think we can reduce the amount we are spending on R&D, and we can make more efficient and effective R&D effort. I think those will be the major suggestions we have for US and Korea collaboration in the future.
If I may just add something to your suggestion, thank you for that suggestion. And actually, our office does host biannual or annual peer review meetings that are open to the international community, to the public, to inform and basically provide information exchange on the latest R&D efforts out of our office. So perhaps I could get that information, pass that on. But that's an excellent suggestion. I will pass that on.
Gentleman right here.
Thank you. I'm Dan Kim from KEEI. Just had a question for Dr. Kim. I wanted to see if you could elaborate on one point that you made. You said that in the years of low oil prices, Korea could potentially make some structural changes. Could you elaborate on the economic logic of that? Because perhaps some might think that in years of high oil prices, it might give extra incentive to move away from that and actually, make investments that might be, economically viable in high oil prices. So why would it be that in low oil prices, it provides an opportunity and incentive to transform some of the sectors that you're talking about? In fact, wouldn't it be perhaps a little more difficult to make the changes that you're talking about?
I think if we can have a bit long-term view, that we believe that this is time for us to invest in the future. With high oil price, high energy cost situation, actually we all busy to adjust ourselves into the current situation. We cannot make the long-term investment. We cannot make the long-term decisions in those situations, actually. Right now, with the low oil price, actually Korean economy is one of the countries will get most benefit. Rather than just enjoying the low oil price right now, actually some of the savings we get, there's opportunity for us that we can invest. We can turn those savings into investment for the future. And some of the energy policies we have made for the last several years was not good economical policies. Some of them we should have to make because of the high oil price. We have to make the short-term decisions at the point. But this is time that we can think about next 20, 30 years. I think we have a little bit of freedom. We can think of those. And we can also make some investment into future with some savings we have. And that's the logic that we like to have about 20, 30-year time frame sort of concept for that policy making decisions.
Yes, the gentleman. You could just wait for the mic. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Kwang Yan Lee from Johnson. I have a question regarding the self-sustaining energy island idea proposed. What I learned is that renewable energy is very much a variable energy source, that it's very intermittent. So if your idea is to have 100% renewable energy and the island has the microgrid that is generated by 100% renewable energy, how would you deal with the intermittent source of that? Even if you combine the solar and wind plus the energy storage, wouldn't that propose some kind of a challenge to have a smooth curving electricity generation. My second question is about the energy diplomacy that was conducted by the Lee Myung-bak administration. What are your thoughts on the review process of that diplomacy? How effective was that diplomacy policy? For example, there were a lot of acquisitions made to get these alternative energy sources and some of the coal and natural gas power plants. Do you think they were effective investment, and how would you review those past investments that have been made? Thank you.
No easy questions today.
Okay, I can take those. I think your point is correct. I believe 100% the renewable energy concept, what we meant by is the base generation will be 100% renewable energy. The power plants, especially the LNG power plant that we are building in Jeju Island right now, they will be used as a backup power plant. So even though we will have 100% renewable energy facilities like solar and wind combined, we don't have to remove the existing investment into the LNG power plant that we have. They have to be kept as a backup energy sources. I think a lot of the renewable energy, as you mentioned, it requires the energy storage to smooth the energy supply there. So renewable energy require the energy storage investment into it. And also the existing power plant can be used as a backup. So that's sort of the picture that we have. The energy decisions that the past Korean government made, I guess some of them are very successful, but some of them might not that successful, I guess. But I'm not in the position to make comments on it, actually. I'm a professor teaching energy policy. But I think that one thing that we'd like to share with you is we should make a lot of decisions with long-term perspective rather than just short-term perspective. And with low oil price right now, it's very difficult to forecast for next 20, 30 years that this will continue or we'll have another high, expensive oil situation. It's very difficult. And government who is responsible for a stable supply and also the balance that we have to strike between cost and also the reliability, it's not an easy task. Right? And I think that, I believe the Korean government has done very well in terms of expanding into multiple energy sources so they can have multiple portfolio. And also, as a country importing about 97% of energy, making investment into new energy area is also the strategic decision that they are making. And I think that's correct direction.
So I'd only throw in a couple. Innovation is inherently uncertain, right? So the trick is to make smart and smaller investments to learn. But some of the stuff if you look at the shale gas revolution that in the United States that everybody talks about today, like it was, a known quantity, there was 30 years of investment by people who believed in this law. And then once it started working, it started working very quickly, right? So that's just sort of the history of innovation is that it's uncertain, right? On your islanding power, there are islands today. We have this combination of software and systems, smart grid, even analytics around weather patterns. Renewables are intermittent, but they're not totally unpredictable. And so there are islands today that are running 80% renewable, and that will get better as technology gets better. So as Dr. Kim says, you might have to have some emergency backup. But as we get smarter about how you integrate, how you predict, how you manage these renewable systems, they'll get better. right? It's part of the, but there are islands today that are 80% renewables, and on a normal day basis, can manage their way through that.
Just on the island issue real quick, it seems to me, this wouldn't necessarily apply to something, in the center of Korea or the center of the United States, but what about the issue, and we haven't talked about either of these technologies yet today, but, of tidal, because obviously for any island there's going to be tides. So, I mean, that would get rid of the intermittency issue. But also, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe there's been work on essentially osmosis, the separation of the salt water and the process of the electricity that's given off when that's done. So it seems like there are certain things, at least for islands, that could be done that wouldn't be intermittent.
There's lots of investments. I mean, it's all a cost benefit. So if you look at tidal power or wave power, even offshore wind today is very high up the cost curve, right? So there's a question always about how those advance. But there is tremendous amount of innovation and investment in this space, which is why I think, to Dr. Kim's point, we don't have to predict what it'll be like 30 years from now. We just have to continue to make progress, and some of these technologies will advance faster than others, and some will become, competitive faster than others. And I think that's why you have to have a kind of a whole portfolio view of this. There isn't a one bet. This is not a one bet game.
2 points, if I can make. First thing is, I think Dr. Kim expressed very eloquently in terms of energy storage and how that is an answer to the question of smoothing the demand curve there. The other point I'd make on energy storage is that Dr. Juk says himself, there is no one energy storage solution. And that is why our program is invested in various technologies. We simply do not say, well, it's only lithium ion or it's only zinc bromide. I mean, we invest in all these technologies. They're at different levels of readiness, technologically and commercially, and so it's important that we continue along this front, because as James has also mentioned, innovation, it's very hard to predict. Things can totally change in an instant if you come away with a breakthrough in your research and development process.
We've done some math, and just to interrupt, with 15 minutes of storage, you can actually firm, again, on a normal day, up quite a bit of wind, because it doesn't stop, and come back a week later. Wind is intermittent, but if you shoot the gaps, for example, there's a lot of research done around how much power does it take for how long, to firm up how much wind, and there's a lot of work going on just to understand how to do it the most efficient way.
Right, and I was going to also mention the island of Hawaii. I think General Electric has invested quite a bit there, and Department of Energy as well. And that's an example that perhaps could be a good case study for you to look at and look into further. That I think helps answer some of your questions.
Yeah, right here, Miko.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you, Troy. My name is Mi Kyung-kim, Washington correspondent with Seoul Shinmun Daily, Korea. I'm not sure if this question fits you here, but we are waiting for the 123 agreement to be settled, to come up very soon. And what do you expect from the agreement in terms of the energy collaboration and alliance? And then, do you think the the nuclear energy should be replaced by the new renewable energy in the future? Thank you.
Wow.
Two more easy questions for you.
I think nuclear is a very difficult topic. I think Korea, not only government, also the public side, a lot of NGO they are involved in, has been a very heavy topic. I think, one of the reasons Korea is enjoying low cost of energy, electricity right now, is actually nuclear. That's, I think, obvious fact. But because of the concerns, especially in Japan situation, there's a lot of debate on it. I think in terms of the using nuclear power in the future, and right now there are several committees in Korea. They're working on it. So they are making. They also do a lot of public hearings and discussions altogether. So I think some of the decisions are being made. I think some of the progress is made, and the Vice Minister Moon, he's actually very busy with those topics at this point that I can share that. Please add. I'm dying here.
I think you're doing great.
Okay. Thank you.
Right here in the front.
Hi, I'm Marcel from Johns Hopkins SAIS. My question is, how big is the market size of coal power plants and other fossil fuel energy power plants in Korea? And do you anticipate any potential conflict of interest while making the transition towards new energy business models? And if yes, have you identified any best practices in terms of addressing these conflict of interests? Thank you.
Okay. I think coal power plant is also one of the major power sources in Korea, definitely. Nuclear is our base, the power at this point. And coal is the second one in terms of the cost competitiveness, so we are using heavily too. But also we are using a lot of LNG. So there are about three major pillars on our energy supply, the power side at this point in Korea. And just like the US, with environmental constraints and climate change efforts, that I think my focus would be that it would be difficult for us to increase coal power plant further in Korea. And some of the major players who are running the coal power plants, they have a responsibility to provide some of the renewable energies too, which is the RPS system that Korean government is assigning into those power plant companies. That they have the responsibility, some percentage of their power generation has to be done through the renewable energy. And those government efforts are actually making those companies into renewable energy, the pioneers, supporters of renewable energy. And I mean, it's not conflict of interest, it's more like a competition. But overall, I think just like the US, I think Korea needs all those energy sources for a while. We need nuclear, we need coal, we need the LNG, and also we need renewable energies. And we'd like to have the portfolio, and depending on the situation of the energy cost and CO2 emission goal that we have, I think we can make some adjustment along the way in the future. I mean, I think that's the direction that we are heading.
I think for these things, even globally, you don't look at the trends, not every instant of where you are. So 10 years ago, coal-based generation on a global basis would be being constructed at twice the rate of gas and 10x renewables. Today, it's the same. So if you look at global power generation, maybe now only 20% of it is coal-based, 20% of it's probably gas combined cycle-based, 20% of it's renewable. So I mean, if you look at just the trends, it's exactly as Dr. Kim says. People are still building coal, but probably at half the rate they were a decade ago, and renewables is probably 10 or 50 times as big as it was a decade ago. So these trends, this is a long life, long cycle industry, and these are trends that are happening and will change the face of everything over time, but it takes time.
I'd just like to add that the Office of Fossil Energy, which is also an office within the Department of Energy, they actually are working on clean coal technologies. So I agree with our panelists here that coal is not going to go away, but it is something that people are working to make cleaner, too, for the environment. So.
All right. Well, I think we've had a very interesting discussion here, and I'd like to specifically thank Dr. Kim for taking a few easy questions for all of us and everything.
No problem.
But if you'll join me in thanking them for that's been a really great discussion here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.